Some of you may have wondered why the choir took off their robes on the way down. It's because, well, there are probably two reasons. One is that they can be hot. And the other reason is that Pastor Hogue, when in the pulpit, loves to look at people's faces. And he doesn't particularly care for the choir, just stay up here behind him. So we just decided to go down and take the robes off on the way down. And we have some wonderful ushers who are meeting the choir members behind the walls there, taking their robes and putting them on hangers. So we're thankful this morning. I'm thankful for Lona's solo. Thankful for what I felt. I fed while she sang. I thought it was beautiful. I enjoyed the part in the middle so much. In the middle, where the songwriter said, "He will hide me in His tabernacle." Thankful that this is the truth. I found that in some of my most difficult moments, and I'm sure this is true for you, that God has hidden you in His tabernacle. And you and I would have a hard time of it if that were not the case. Our lives would be much more difficult than they are. But God has given us hope and assurance, and we're leaning upon Him this morning. I found out about this preaching assignment at about 4:15 this morning. So I'm just trusting. You can imagine how a minister would feel who hadn't really had a lot of time to prepare to speak to people. It was so hard for me to speak in school. Now, some of you might not think that would be true. But believe it or not, it really was, because I wasn't interested in my schoolwork. And I usually wasn't very well prepared. I needed a good teacher to encourage me about my homework. And I had all kinds of ways of not letting anybody know that I had homework. And I tricked my mom and daddy for a long time. I was really just tricking myself. But see, I was trying to trick them, and they'd want to know if I had any homework. Well, no, I did it all. I did it all at school. Shame on me. Shame on me, because it came time for Pastor Steve to give his speech or something, and I was about like a dead man. I didn't know what to do. And so the Lord has just had to help me. Now, I don't know why in the world He called me to be a preacher. I really don't. But He did. He did. And sometimes He calls people who have great abilities. I'm thankful for that. I love to hear those kind of folks preach. We have one preaching this pulpit about every week. Our little pastor. He has a wonderful gift. He's an intellectual. And he loves the Lord with all of his heart. I'm sorry he's not here this morning. I'll tell you this much. If it were possible for him to be here today, he would be here. You all know that. He's not here for a very good reason. And so we're praying for his strength this morning. But I love to hear him when God helps him. I love to hear him in the pulpit just like you. And we have visitors here today who wanted to hear him preach. So I'm sorry. I apologize for him not being able to be here. He's sorry himself. He wishes he were here. And we spoke to him on the phone just before coming out. And he's encouraged. He's praising the Lord. And we're trusting that he will have his strength back in a couple weeks. Jesus giving him help, several days or whatever. God knows. And we're looking to Jesus this morning. I'm thankful that God is faithful to us. And I know that when we do the best we can, God takes care of things. When we're following Jesus, then the Holy Spirit takes care of things. The Lord doesn't forsake us. And He is faithful to help us if we will just continue to look to Him. I'm thankful for that today. So I'm here this morning by the grace of God, just like the rest of you. And I'm trusting to hear for maybe 15 or 20 minutes to share a little sermon with you from the book of Matthew. if you'd like to turn there. Matthew, the 2nd chapter, verse 13. Matthew 2 is a tremendous chapter, because in this chapter we find, as G. Campbell Morgan would say, and as preachers have been reading after Brother Morgan here lately, G. Campbell Morgan would say that Matthew 2 is a microcosm. It's a little world all into itself. And in this little world, in Matthew chapter 2, we really see how, not only how Jesus was treated when he was here, but we also see how his followers would be treated in the years to come. I don't have time to go into all that this morning. I'm just going to talk about one little verse here. Verse 13. Matthew 2:13. It says, Herod will seek the young child to destroy him. Herod will seek the young child to destroy him. Let me quote to you here from G. Campbell Morgan, if you please. I believe this is crucial for us, and I'll just read part of this to us. He said, like a flash of clear light, these words reveal the dark and sinister things of evil. Look at the young child. He is the child born to humanity, the son given by God. He is the explanation of God's ideal for man, and the unveiling of God's love for man. Look at Herod. He is the very incarnation of pride and perversity. Herod will seek to destroy the young child. He will not be successful. Instead, the young child will destroy Herod. But the way to victory will be the way of wounding, of anguish, of death. He concludes by saying, we must note the significance of these words. They should ever be before us. End of quote. Herod is still seeking to kill the young children. His ways and his means may still be discovered by his treatment of the young child. Everything that threatens child life, however it appears, may appear to be beautiful, is inherently evil. Herod is Edom. Herod was an Edomite. Did you know that? The Edomites descended from Esau. Esau was the one who forfeited his birthright for a mess of pottage. Herod represents materialism and sensuality. And when children are looked at from a materialistic standpoint only, then they face one of the most severe dangers of their life. They are attacked by a deadly foe. Isn't it an awful thing for moms and dads to instill, as Oliver would say, Edomite blood in their children? You know yourself, if you have an infection, it's very difficult sometimes to get rid of it. Sometimes you can't even find a medicine that'll get rid of it. Sometimes you just have to pray and wait the thing out and hope that within a few days or a week or a couple weeks the thing goes away. And if I get a sinus infection, I have to sniff salt water and take my sinus pills or whatever to try to get rid of it. It's best not to get it to begin with. It's best not to be infected. But once a person becomes infected, it's mighty difficult to get them delivered. Whether it's an infection in the body, and then sometimes we have a backset, and the backset is worse than the first case. God came into life in the form of a baby. Jesus came as a young child. He came to reveal us to ourselves. He came also to reveal God to man. But by doing this, by coming in the form of a child, He compelled us to guard the early years of childhood. Because we have discovered, as psychologists have told us and many others, that the first few years of existence for any of us were crucial years in our development. In the first 2 or 3 years, our temperament is determined. The kind of personality we have, whether or not we can take disappointment, whether or not we're able to go all the way through with something. You see, as a minister, I found that not many people are willing to go all the way. Not many people are willing to persevere and go through the difficulty to arrive at the product.
Yes, true.
And so Jesus had the experience almost at birth of being hated by Herod. And he was driven into Egypt. Thank God the prophet said, "Out of Egypt will I call my son." Hallelujah. God was going to bring him out of there. But nonetheless, Jesus had to flee to Egypt. Herod was after him right away. And I want to tell you something. If you've not found it out, Herod will be after your children just as soon, or if not a little bit later, or whatever. Herod will be after your children in just a little while. When I was a boy, baseball was really a big thing. Now, there are a lot of things in this world. I know that there are many cultures, and I'm sure that children all over the world have their little games and pursuits. But of course, we live in the good old USA, and baseball and popcorn and candy-coated apples, a few other things. But when I was a boy, baseball was really a thing. Football hadn't really hit the place yet. Football didn't really come onto the scene strongly until I was getting in high school. And then in the last 10 years, why football has just taken over. But when I was a boy, baseball was really a big thing. It was a big thing in our community. I played in the Little League. I enjoyed it. One reason I enjoyed it is because, if I may say so, I was a pretty good ball player. I saw two guys up at the mall yesterday, and they were tall and lanky, big tall guys. And I looked at my wife and said, "Honey, they had baseball uniforms on, walking around there. One guy had dirt all over his leg. That told me he'd slid in someplace, And they were walking out across the lot, and I said, I wish I could take a shot at those two. I used to pitch, see? So I had a little resurgence of my youth. I wanted to get a shot at those two fellas. I said, "Honey, they get up to the plate and they'd hear something go by and say, 'What was that?' That's strike one." I was playing one time in an all-star game years ago, and my mama was sitting down on the front porch. She was crying. Oh, she was so shook up. I was 13 years old, and we had an all-star game. We played the ball club out of Winston-Salem. Some of the biggest old boys I've about ever seen. They were big for their age. I don't know where they found them. You'd think that they scattered them up or something and hired somebody to bring them in. They were big guys. They were a lot bigger than us on the average. And when we watched batting practice, they just kept knocking the ball over the fence. Boy, they just whap, they'd knock the thing over the fence like that. I was sitting on Grandpa Reinhardt's front porch, and I kept seeing balls go over the fence, whoop, like that. Well, my dad was up there watching them take batting practice, and he came down to the house and said, Stephen, now listen. This is a big bunch of guys, and they're strong. And they'll knock the ball out of here on you. You're going to have to keep the ball down if you're going to beat these boys. Because one of the worst pitches you can throw anybody is belt high. And if you get one up around the letters, somebody can ride one out on you too. But now a lot of times they'll pop you up. You can pop a guy up if you can make him go after a high one. But Daddy told me to have to keep that ball down on those guys or they'd beat the daylights out of me. So I proceeded. Now, believe it or not, in those days, before I hurt my elbow, in those days, I could throw that ball just where I wanted to almost every time. I could put it on the corner. I could throw it on the outside corner. I could put it on the inside corner. I could throw a high pitch. I had a curve ball that would about break around your head. One of my favorite things was throwing I had a big roundhouse curve ball. I don't know how in the world I got that thing. But I had a big roundhouse curveball, and I could throw it at the guy's head, and it was a late breaking curveball, and they'd think it was gonna get them, and they'd fall out of the box and think it'd break over the plate. I used to do that all the time. Oh, and I knew it wasn't ethical to laugh, but every once in a while I had to laugh a little bit anyway. I'd laugh at it. I remember the first guy I struck out, my first Little League ball game. I struck him out, and I dropped my head down and just laughed at him because I did that. I had to get over that. I had to quit that. I imagine the way it is in the major leagues now, you laugh at somebody, they'll throw a bat at you. They did a lot of fighting last year, didn't they? Well, we got against this team. Well, I beat that bunch of guys. Let's see, I pitched a 2 or 3 hitter. I forget what it was. Boy, it was a hard game. Man, we had to work at it. I struck out 17 that day out of 21 batters. What do you think?
Amen.
Amen. I gave him a fit. I really did. But I want to tell you a little experience I had. It was the funniest part of the whole thing for me. This is when I had to keep from laughing the most, but I enjoyed it to the hilt. This little old guy came up there. He got up in the box, Wink. Now, Wendell's played a lot of baseball. That's why I keep referring to Wendell over here. And this boy got in the box. He's a right-hander. I pitch right-handed. He got up there. I got a strike on him. I think he popped one up. And then I decided I'd throw him a curveball. So he got up there. He got the box, and I cut loose with a curveball right at his noggin. I'm telling you, right at his head. And he stood there like that, and it was 2 in the afternoon. It was 90-some degrees. We were playing on red clay. It was just like you women when you get your little powder puff box open, and it goes poof like that. That's the way it was. It was just like a powder puff. Just poof the dirt. If you'd walk in the dust would go poof around your feet. And that's the way it was in that batter's box. Well, here he was, boy. I had one strike on him. I cut loose with that next one in his head. And he thought he was going to hit him, and I still remember he threw his bat down and fell right flat on his back in that dirt. He stayed as long as he could stay, and when he couldn't stand it anymore, he just went kaplunk, and there he was. I wish you'd have seen him. He just all spread eagle out like this on the ground, like that. Strike 2, that old umpire said. Why, he jumped up out of that dirt. He jumped around there. He was so mad, he snorted all over the place. But he got up there the next pitch. I cut loose with a high, hard one, and bango, he went for it, and I got him. Had a great day. But let me tell you something. What's so sad about it is that in all that enjoyment, and I loved it so much, what's so sad about it is that so many of us were being sought by Herod.
Yes.
That's what's so bad.
Yes.
Because once you get the love of the world in your heart, my friend, it becomes hard to be a friend of God. In fact, Jesus said that if you love the world, you can't love God. Pastor Hogue has preached so hard. He's preached hard for over 10 years in this pulpit to warn us and to warn us parents about our children, because Jesus warned us about it. Jesus faced Herod right away. Herod tried to destroy him. I pray that God can and will get this message in our hearts this morning. The perils are just as great. Did you know that? And don't think for a minute, not for a moment, that things have changed, because they haven't. Things are just like they were when Jesus was here. You will have to guard those first years for that little boy or that little girl yourself, Mom and Daddy. You'll have to do it. I don't know. Oliver said, Stephen, where did you get that sermon? Why are you going to preach on that this morning? Well, I said, Pastor, I don't know hardly. I know that I felt like the Holy Spirit operated with me about it. And so I decided to come give it a try. God helping me. We must go with the child, speaking of Jesus, all the way of witness and suffering. We must go with the child all the way of witness and suffering. If we're to share in His triumph, we must do this. And yet, do you know what we'll have to do if we share in His triumph and if we go with Him? We'll have to oppose Herod. You'll have to oppose Herod immediately. You'll have to be against him right from the start. That's what's so difficult on new converts. They don't know they're going to meet Herod as soon as they get into the ballpark. Just as soon as they get started, they meet right up with Herod, who says, well, you shouldn't do that. You're a fanatic. You shouldn't be going to church Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday night. You need to be over here with the boys. So we meet right up with this spirit of the world. That's why I believe one of the reasons why the burden is so heavy on the ministry today. Every true man of God carries a heavy load because he's trying to get out of his people this awful spirit of Herod. Because so many times we're either inflicted with it or our children are inflicted with it. Remember what Herod represents, and I shared it right the first. He represents pride and perversity. He represents pollution. Herod represents materialism, sensuality. The Esau who sells a birthright for a mess of pottage. You and I must not comply in any way with his outlook. See, a prophet of God will split a congregation right in half. Every true prophet of God who's ever lived, whether he lived in the Old Testament times or whether he lives now, he will split a place right away. Probably his first sermon. It may not be what he says. It may not be his first message. He might preach on love, his first message, and just tell everybody how they ought to love everyone. There's more than that. There's an anointing on that man's life. There's a calling on that man's life. And that very calling of God, my friend, is an enemy of Herod.
Yes, amen.
It's an enemy of Herod, brother. It's against him. Therefore, we have a split. Love of self always means hatred of the child. Did you know that? Love of self always means hatred of the child. Love of the child always means self-emptying and sacrifice. The work of the shepherd for the lamb, said Brother Morgan, is often hard work. Oftentimes he must traverse high mountains searching for the sheep. Many times he finds himself in conflict with the wolf and a bloody battle ensues. But I want to tell you something. And this makes it worthwhile. It is a work with God. We're battling against Herod with God because God's against him. He's against that spirit. He loved old Herod over there just like he loved everybody. But he was against that spirit. And when you and I battle against it, and we're going to have to if we follow Jesus, then we battle with God on our side. And we save our children, and we save ourselves. We battle with God. And that means that fellowship in His suffering ever leads to fellowship in His triumph. I trust the Lord has helped you this morning as I've shared with you. It said that Herod sought the young child to kill him, but instead was destroyed himself. May the Lord add His blessing to His holy word this morning. Thank you.